اختناق. المعدن الغامق يمرر الأكسجين المبرد إلى صمتنا. ليس وشيكا قطع المسافة. إذن هكذا تنبجس الخسارات. هل يسمعني أحد؟ شرايين بيتنا لم تكن يوما وفق ذوقي. My name is Ali Al-SHAALI. I come from Dubai, United Arab Emirates, which is in the Middle East. I am a publisher, full-time publisher. I have my own 2 imprints, one for adults, one for children. I also have a digital bookshop. Originally, I am a civil engineer with master's certificate in project management. My country is a big, my region actually is big on poetry. I'm a poet. What is the best thing about being a writer? This question is so tricky to me because it made it more of a choice. For me, writing has never been a choice. I, like most writers, found it to be kind of a destiny. And by time, it became an identity of myself, not only to other people, but to myself as well. Whenever I need to express my feelings, understand myself a little bit more, or understand what is going around me, I tend to write. What is the best thing about it in my country? I mean, writing has always been a respected kind of trait in my region. And I think it is becoming more of a necessity for the world to exercise this universal sport of exchanging ideas and opinions in an artistic fashion, if I may say. Writing involves responsibility towards your words, towards your ideas, and towards your readers, not only today, but in the generations to come. We poets specifically have the idea that our first print doesn't go to sales fully, but we have the hope of having it sold across the decades, maybe, or somebody to read it for research purposes in 100 years' time. So this is where the responsibility comes into play. The other thing is having people looking at you from a perspective that what you say goes in a way or another. So you've got to be, again, responsible, but more than that, careful of what you say. I'm talking now about essays. Poetry is, for me, an open space where I feel complete liberty on what I write and what I say. I've studied civil engineering in United Arab Emirates University. Engineering and civil in specific is more about structure and strength. And I think if not during the first spurt of the poem, at least during editing, you could use some of this structural analysis and some of the beautification of the architecture element of my poem. I don't like to construct my poems like one of the journalists one day said about me, I engineer the poem. I don't, but final touches, I could use that. One more thing, our professors used to say in the university that engineering, what it does is that it brushes your mind and gives you a structured kind of thinking. I hope this is carried over to my poetry writing experience in a way or another, but that is for the readers to judge. In the last 10 to 15 years, in my country and neighboring countries, there has been so many programs for supporting authors, translators, editors, and publishers, and I honestly cherish that. Talking about what kind of support I prefer, in my opinion, a smart support is needed. Smart meaning the formula should be handled rather from the bottom top. I mean the readers. are where the efforts, most of the efforts should be directed. If you have enough readers, aware readers, then everything else will fall into place. You will have translators encouraged to translate, editors, publishers encouraged to produce, and accordingly, the main part, our formula is the author. The author then will be encouraged to write because he has somebody to write to. I know out of ego, most of authors say we write for ourselves, but it's not true. I look at the author's eyes and their readings. They're looking for this interaction. They're looking for this connection with their readers. So I think if I am to choose one way of supporting the publishing and the writing process, I would say to encourage readers to be more aware and more serious about their reading project. I have an experience with writing poetry. I've been writing poetry for almost 25 years now. I can write poetry very comfortably, but with novels and fiction, it is challenging to start, or midway actually is where you have all the self-doubts and how to end it, where it is going. It's very challenging to take it through, and it is more of a project. And here is where I also need my project management skills. It is where to put the milestones, how to end the chapter. And there are all of these rules out there given in workshops, courses on how to hook the reader, how to keep him on a cliffhanger. But the most pleasurable, I would say, and this could sound different to so many authors and my colleagues, editing, where I get my knife to clean the extra fat and the fillings. And I see, at least in my eyes, that my piece now is fit enough to go out and fly in the world. I'll be proud of my piece if it is not overloaded with words. We are blacksmiths of language at the end of the day. And for us to have a piece that is not in shape, it's not something that I would like to have for myself or for others. To be fair and honest, I've been reading all my life in Arabic. I read in English, be it literature or self-help or management or what have you. However, I don't prefer to name, but if I am to name somebody, if I am put against the wall to name somebody, I would say Adonis, in one of his books, Zaman al-Shi'r, has in the time of poetry, it's called. It's a collection of his essays, even when he's a very prominent poet. But I have been very influenced by his forward-looking opinions about how literature and poetry in specific should be handled in our region back in the 60s, when the fight between the old and new was at its peak. It will always be the case, but that was a focal point of how the game has changed all over our region. Some of the essays were provocative enough for me to read them time and again and say, why is he pushing us that far? But he was not pushing us as writers as much as he was pushing the envelope. I have a great admiration for him as a writer. I happened to meet him in professional formats when I changed career from engineering to literature. I met him in Paris in 2008 and I asked him, what did you mean by this and that? And then I got a bonus on my understandings of the essays. What have I been working on in Iowa? It is with great pleasure that I say I've been productive in a way. I've finished a collection of short stories that I've started in Dubai. I have written 4 back home and 7 in here. I've also written a couple of poems, visiting all the art museums here in Iowa and New York and Chicago. I've also been visiting some of the panel subjects that have been suggested by the organizers. I told the organizer that I fell in love with the synopses, so I had these 3-4 articles. Plus, I mean, working means producing, but working means as well receiving. I've received a ton of beautiful works from my colleagues and from the visitors and residents of Iowa. It has been a rich experience, and I wouldn't miss to thank the University of Iowa and the IWP team, all the way up to the founders. What have I found surprising about Iowa? Nothing, because I have not expected anything. Everything in Iowa is surprising to me. The tranquility, the good pace of life, the love of the general public to literature, art. You meet somebody in a coffee shop, he discusses poetry. So everything, actually, the answer, nothing, was just a joking start for this answer. What have I found surprising about the US? US is the prevailing country in the media, so we know probably too much about it. However, in the culture scene, I would say I expected to feel lonely in the program, having the idea that the West and the United States celebrate novelists and fiction writers more than poets, but that was not the case. The balance between poets and fiction writers in our cohort was well studied, and I was happy to see that. Moreover, I was happy to see that the public and the audience here, Chicago and in New York, they are still in connection with poetry. Poetry is not doing well commercially, but that doesn't mean anything when it comes to the quality of the literary works enjoyed by the public. In one of the discussions I had with my Japanese colleague, Yasuhiro San, he said, after natural disasters in Japan, his country of origin, people go towards poetry, writing, reading, exchanging pieces of old poems, because poetry has its place in the world. And this is one of the things that was somewhat pleasingly surprising to my visit to the US in IWP format. For the coming years of IWP, I hope for my colleagues to enjoy a more peaceful kind of news from over the seas. I mean, we've lived some hard days here, and I don't want to say it distracting as much as pressing. It has affected the overall experience, and it has affected our psychological status and the writing as well. I hope for a world full of peace and love.